John Boorman, he had a script for a live action Lord of the Rings that was supposed to come out in 1970, or that's when it was being created. But thankfully, it was never created because it is the weirdest thing you will ever read. But
I think this.
yeah,
I'm starting to get those bells. But did you say that it was a script for a movie? Sorry, is that what you were saying?
Script for a movie, a live action movie.
I think I misheard you. I thought you said a book or something. Okay, so a live action movie. Okay.
No, it was never made, but there are a full 173 page script. It exists, and it was supposed to be written for a 3-hour long adaptation of the entire trilogy.
Was there like some really kind of weird, kind of raunchy, like unusual parts in it? Yeah, okay, all right. So yes, the bells are well and truly ringing right now.
Right, the bells are ringing. Yeah. So I have basically you can find the script out there. There was 173 pages. I didn't look through it all. I only went back to like check out some of the scenes that I'm going to touch on here. But anyways, I've paraphrased basically what a man named Daniel Stride writes in his blog entitled "From Magic Mushrooms to Morannon: The John Boorman Script of The Lord of the Rings, 1970." So let's get into it. Don't worry, this won't be long. He says, well, one need look no further than Gandalf. We actually see Boorman's Gandalf tauntingly encourage Boromir to take the ring at one point. We see him psychologically bullying Bilbo. We see him literally abusing Gimli before the doors of Moria to awaken quote-unquote ancestral memories. So it tends to get even worse as the story goes on. The first half of the script more or less aligns with the Fellowship of the Ring. And now I'm saying more or less because in that while the earlier sections are still recognizably the Lord of the Rings, they are completely weird and crazy. Gandalf, for some unknown reason, does not have a single excuse not to accompany Frodo to Rivendell. The Hobbit's consumption of mushrooms takes on a clear psychedelic twist. It is Sam, not Tom Bombadil, who sings the willow to sleep. The ring wraiths literally dissolve in water, like the Wicked Witch of the West. And
like Disprin.
Like Disprin. And that's just before ignoring the characterization of Merry. Merry, of all people, is the overweight and clueless comic relief. So there you have it. A couple of other things that happen in the script that get weirder and weirder. So rather than a prologue, just like Ralph Bakshi's or Peter Jackson's, we get treated to expositional symbolic play at Rivendell. Do you know the way I think they do it in Game of Thrones?
Oh, right, okay.
One of those kind of things. Arwen.
And it's done in Thor as well.
Yes, yeah, with like Matt Damon. Yeah. So Arwen in this story is actually only 13 years old for some reason, but don't worry, she doesn't end up with Aragorn. He that's not his love interest. That honor actually goes to Éowyn. Instead, Boorman ramps up the magical element of the elves, so Arwen and Elrond are able to keep track of the Fellowship and provide weird kind of voiceovers. The exception to the magical elves, of course, is Legolas, whom the script seems to completely forget is an actual elf at some times, because he refers to the last of the fair people leaving at the Grey Havens when he's not going anywhere. So that's another weird thing. We also have Boorman has him rescue the Fellowship. Boorman has Gandalf rescue the Fellowship from the wargs via encasing himself and his companions in ice, which is kind of strange. And also before the doors of Durin, he physically forces poor Gimli into a little hole to get the password out of him, which is bizarre. And also, since Narsil is not reforged until Minas Tirith, Aragorn and Boromir wind up sharing the shards until Boromir's death. So that's weird as well. I can't imagine, Aragorn.
What that would add to the story as well.
Yeah. Okay, so another weird.
Also, it's so that's weird. So Narsil, that's similar to Peter Jackson's. It's not forged until Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
Whereas in the books, I mean, that's weird that he would go along that line as well, because it's not like, oh, of course, because like in the material that he would have had back in the 70s would have been Tolkien's writings, which was Narsil was reforged in Rivendell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So unusual,
and before that, Aragorn doesn't even really have a sword, does he? He just has like a shtick.
Oh, in the book, he has he carries around the hilt of
Narsil
of the sword.
But like do you know the way before we actually get to?
But he carries around the hilt and like the small the little part of the blade before it's broken. Like, but he's like look at my sword. It's like
he doesn't really need to use it.
it's like
Whereas
4 inches.
in the films, if he has so much action before he gets to the reforging of the blade, so it just wouldn't have made sense, which is funny. But now probably the weirdest part of the book is Galadriel is a seductive lakeside dwelling sorceress whom the Fellowship are, let's say, interested in. And yes, in that way, every single one of the Fellowship is like lusting after Galadriel. And despite the best efforts of everyone else, including Boromir, she ends up having sex with Frodo Baggins. And incidentally, Pippin reveals this later on to Denethor that Galadriel basically boinked Frodo and not Boromir. And this does not help the steward's mood later on. He's like, it should have been Boromir. So I actually, when I read this in the blog, I wanted to go to the script and find the exact quote from the script. So what it reads is, accepting the invitation. This is talking about Frodo, by the way. Accepting the invitation, his eyes wandered over her body, drinking in its loveliness. Galadriel's austere and aloof features soften. Galadriel's hand touches the chain from which the ring dangles as Frodo's hand takes hers. Frodo again looks deep into the reflection in the basin and sees their two faces come together and kiss. And then it does switch to another scene, so you can see that the raunchy part is off camera, but it later goes back. I didn't want to, keep quoting it, but it later goes back and they're like lying together naked in a boat or something, and she's like rubbing his chest, and it's just so
when you're talking about like that's so mad. Also, I think it's funny when you're talking about a sex scene and you just said that Galadriel touched something that was dangling.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's a strange word to use. Did she touch something that was dangling later on?
But like, this is the direction. This isn't like, this isn't anyone saying anything in the script. This is just direction. But it sounds like he could be an erotic novelist. This John Boorman. But yeah, that's probably the weirdest part. But anyways, I'll read out the last couple of notes here that I have.
What about Gollum? What was the character of Gollum like?
I didn't read the script. There was nothing on Gollum from this guy's summation of everything. But just to quickly gloss over everything else, the entire Isengard plotline is cut. So it's goodbye to the Ents and goodbye to Helm's Deep. None of that is in there. Saruman takes the place of the mouth of Sauron at the Morannon. So he's not really in the story at all. He just pops up at the end. At Minas Tirith, Theoden leads the Rohirrim down. Legolas brings tree elves. Gimli brings dwarves, and Aragorn, apart from fighting with the two shards of Narsil in each hand, he's a straight-out necromancer, summoning the dead from a graveyard with no explanation whatsoever. There's none of this like Oathbreakers explanation. It's just, he's a necromancer. There is no Faramir, so Denethor's fixation on the loss of Boromir is arguably more understandable. Rather than burning himself at a pyre, Denethor's suicide weirdly enough involves him holding a dagger to his heart as he embraces Aragorn. Again, these just sound like unnecessary, weird changes for no reason. And Aragorn in the Corsair ships, that scene, that doesn't happen at all. That's actually replaced with Aragorn and his forces camouflaging themselves as a giant snake. So that sounds like something you see in pantomime or something,
or Monty Python.
Yeah, Monty Python. Or like, when the Chinese
if we built a giant badger.
What? Oh my god, that scene is so funny.
What now? Now we climb out of the rabbit. Lancelot, Galahad, and I.
Jesus Christ. So
who climbs out?
Well, Lancelot and I.
Yeah.
What happens now? Well, now, Lancelot, Galahad and I wait until nightfall and then leap out of the rabbit, taking the French by surprise. Not only by surprise, but totally unarmed.
Who leaps out?
Lancelot, Galahad, and I leap out of the rabbit Look, if we built this large wooden badger...
So the orcs, they are basically part reptilian and part bird-like, apparently. The Ent demolition of Isengard is sort of paid tribute here when a random tree decides to take down the wall of Mordor by itself, granting Frodo and Sam a way in. And after the destruction of the ring, everyone, including the orcs, basically decide to go home. Like, it was all just a big war, and they're like, all right, let's go home. And Saruman apparently pursues a career of small-time con man. So there's no scouring of the Shire. He's just like, right, I'm just going to pickpocket people in the streets or whatever.
All right.
And then finally, Legolas and Gimli are the ones to say farewell beside the sea, and not the hobbits. So there you have it. That's a summary of what could have been, and thank God it didn't, because seeing as Tolkien himself would have been alive at this time, this is supposed to be 1970. Tolkien died in 1973, so goodness knows what he would have thought.
My God, can you imagine?
So you can count your lucky stars, folks, that we didn't get this adaptation. People are complaining about the Rings of Power, but oh my God, it could have been so much worse. Could have been so.
Could you imagine that came out this year with Twitter as well?
Oh God.